Yeah, but I mean, as we re-educate ourselves or unlearn propaganda and actually expose ourselves to what is evidenced, you would think that would only make us more compassionate toward each other in those regards of the way people identify or how they're affected. Like for just one instance, there is something really overlooked in the LGBTQ community, um, in regards to the sexual abuse that a lot of people on generally without any labels associated. There's a lot of child abuse and sexual abuse that is not talked about and is not discussed. And it affects people differently. And one of those ways that it affects people is that they pull away from it or they, get hyper fixated on things.
Yep.
And it's not even,
Even
yeah,
a
it's
large
not.
portion of men have experienced some type of rape, including myself. I mean, it is across the board. It's not just, I mean, it's the kids too, but I'm saying even with adults, like studies have shown that it's just so prevalent.
Yeah, but it's all unspoken. And then since we don't talk about it, we don't accept. We see so many symptoms and consequences of root problems that just consistently aren't getting addressed, is all. But we all know that already. Um, on one level, there's kind of a natural healing going on because of how many people are coming back around to the and how do you say the word at the yeah,
Entheogens,
there you go. I have such a hard time
right?
saying it,
Tiger.
but
You know more than I do.
yeah, but people coming back to that, against the grain, you know what I mean? There's slow healing coming around because we already have a couple of generations that have come back to it, and it's going to just make it easier for, the kids to be more accepting of what truly is natural and what is imposed, because we have lost touch on all of that. And we are learning that
And
now from where these boomers fucking wanted to have veils over their own eyes and their children, you know, at the
and I think
expense of the
allowing
grandkids.
yeah, I think allowing the kids to mature before they're exposed to the religious stuff, that's how is a much better way than indoctrinating them to begin with, because they're not allowed to think for themselves. They're just going to parrot your views.
Well, what is natural would be children being exposed to nature. That is what's natural at the youngest. Their concepts and understanding of their world would be what is naturally around them, but they're removed from nature right now. We are removed from, how many kids go outside barefoot? They forgot what it felt like to walk on grass. And there's a severe disconnect on the very base level that is only good for those organizations like of the church to then fill in the gap of what is the base, what is natural. And yeah, definitely. I have hope for it. I see all around people are rebelling, against the upbringing. There are so many people on YouTube that were like, "Oh, I used to be Mormon," or "I was this and that," and they're apostates now, and they're speaking on it, and trying to speak on what really happens in those communities and the power dynamics that are put in place and stuff. And all of that being out in the open is just going to make it so that it's hopefully less and less prevalent
And I think most of those people still keep the same moral standards that they had coming from the
on
religion.
a
I'm just
level.
saying, like, people want to just think that they're just going like evil, blah 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 blah. But for the most part, they're the same moral people that they were with the religion. They just don't believe the same thing that they used to believe.
Yeah, I think their claim about objective morality though is a little bit far fetched. It's basically relative. It's not even subjective.
Well, and
And
and I think a lot about that too with the quantum mechanics and like stuff not being real until it's observed. Like we're literally creating our reality just by observing it. Then, right? I mean, ipso facto. So we're like jointly observing the same thing. You know what I mean?
Well, it's kind of like the system is a mass hallucination. It's their mass hallucination, and people are willing to either go with it or not go with it. And to the point of the claim of being subjective moral or objective morality is just ridiculous because over time, even in their own church and denominations, it's all changed. Whether that's Orthodox or Catholicism,
Mm-hmm.
it's all changed at some point, and you can actually look at those and show well. And then they go and then they admit it. They say yes, it's changes culturally and over different time periods. Well, that is the definition of uh, moral relativism. Subjectivism is kind of what we all adhere to, you, I, Cameron, others that don't have a hard set rule or 10 commandments to guide us. We're all just basing it off of, kind of like if I punch somebody in the face, it's gonna hurt. Why? Because and it's not, they're gonna feel bad because if I get hit in the face, I'm gonna feel that way too. And that's kind of how we go about it. But it's weird because we don't. I think we're way less. We're we're, we're not the ones that need morality. They do. See, we just have ethics. They need morality because one, they're all fighting each other. It's cults against cult. It's cult versus cult. So they have to tell each other, well, that's not the right thing to do. Even in their own denominations, they're fighting within each other. But you and I and Cameron, we're not fighting each other.
Yeah,
We're not
and
trying to. I'm not trying to put my cult above. I don't even have one, nor does Cameron. But there's no
well, I'm starting my
fighting.
own. I'm starting my own cult, but that's beside the point.
But even if you had a cult, if we all had three cults, let's say we were all doing our own thing and they didn't intersect or have but that's the point is like the Greeks had a bunch of different goddesses in different mythos to explain that, theogonies and cosmologies, which is funny because even like the Iliad is called theogony, but it's actually both a cosmology and a theogony, like all into one. So not only are they creating the gods and goddesses, but they're also creating the universe and like giving you the story for what they thought that was cosmology. And even if we had those things going for us, they were cool and chill about it. They welcomed other people doing that, and they also allowed other religions in their kingdom, which is what got them eventually screwed. Because they were like, "Oh, you want to be Christian? That's cool. We're cool with it." And then eventually that just vitiated and destroyed them. But you see what I'm saying? Like when it's us versus them mentality, that's what creates them to have a morality to begin with as their guiding star, because otherwise they'd just be doing what the Canaanites did before. The same people that were there in Israel were doing baby sacrifices and other things like that they found outside at the high holy place at Gezer. They actually found buried tombs and vases with infant babies in them, burned. They found kids chopped in half, literally, like toddlers and 9-year-old, potentially 9-year-old girls that were chopped in half and cut open and stuff like that, mummified, and that's what they were doing. So you know the tribes in Peru were also doing that as well, and it's dangerous territory. Even the psychedelic experience, which a lot of people paint this picture that psychedelics are like the end all be all answer for everything, and they're not. You have to do a lot of work outside of that. You have to reflect, you have to integrate it back into your own, have to inculcate it back into your own life. But if you're in a cultural setting with psychedelics, what we see down there in Peru is that they were doing that snuff that Alman brought up the other day in his thing, the DMT. And they found this recently in archaeology about a month and a half ago, but they formed a weird culture where they were basically created inequality with women. So to point to like what the Christians were doing, there are also some tribes doing that in South America. And that's what we need to teach is that look, it's not to get this messiah complex or have this priesthood that you develop around um, these power structures of people using this stuff. It's giving the ability for everybody to use it in a safe manner if they want to. You don't have to force it on people. And not everybody, honestly, I've been saying this for a long time. Yes, plants are for everybody, but they're not for everybody because people aren't ready for that. Some people might lose their minds. Like, they might actually freak out. They might, and this has happened. People have freaked out.
Know
Um,
thyself.
yeah, and they don't like that, which is why a lot of people stay away from it. You know, quite honestly, they hear stories like that, and I'm like, I don't want to do anything, don't want to do that to myself because I'm fearful that it will happen to me.
Because you can't,
So we need
yeah,
to,
you can't anticipate how it'll sit in you.
Yeah, for me personally, when I tried shrooms, they did not do well for me. Like, it wasn't like I got bad visuals or stuff. I just did not feel very well on them, and I think definitely being in the right headspace has a lot to do with it too. Like, I
yeah, it's
personally
just,
wouldn't do it again without some kind of like shamanic experience or some kind of a guide to do
Hmm.
that, because I just don't feel
That's
good
what we
about doing it by
need.
myself.
More people that are in those positions, whether they be elders or not, but the position of knowing and having the wisdom to be able to guide. That's what we
yeah.
lack in so many levels.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I frequently, not frequently, but from time to time, I take a big dose, and I don't know if you guys know this, but Thursday night, I did a massive dose of ayahuasca, double what most people should do, and I can tell you if the average American did that, they would have called for the hospital. I can guarantee you that. Because there was points where I wanted to, and I threw up and I had the whole experience. But I've had this before, and it's not every time I do that. I don't do mega doses often. Honestly, the last mega dose I did was 8 years ago, and this time was like wild, and I wanted to. I thought I was physically dying. Like ego death is one thing, but physical, to feel physically like you're dying, and that's what you read about too. Is a lot of these retreats down in South America that do the ayahuasca ceremonies, even with the shamans. A lot of people end up throwing up, and they go through these experiences that are very similar to that. Um, I don't recommend that to everybody. I only did that because one, I felt very comfortable with my years of doing it, and I kind of know how to navigate those murky, murky waters when you're in there. I think most people would call that a bad experience, but yes, I tell people to start small and work their way up if they want to, but it can't be a full dive in immediately. I think you have to respect the medicine, otherwise the medicine will let you know, and the mystery will let you know, like, hey, you need to calm down a little bit, and that's what I've gotten from it too. So I agree, and honestly, this whole experience that I had, it was like that was the message I received. Even the in Judaism, obviously there's a lot of people that think that those were psychedelic experiences with the burning bush, Moses on the mountain, and the masses around the golden calf. Some rabbis even think that was a mass hallucination based off of some sort of psychedelic. And I think that's true because shamanism, these chanting, even in the Greek, the chanting, the glossolalia, the speaking in tongues, um, these are all things to help you through the psychedelic experience, the session, if you will. And that's what a shaman can do. And chanting is very helpful. I was chanting. I had to. I mean, you get to a point where you're like, literally, you don't know if you're going to come back to who you were. I got to a point where I didn't even know myself on Thursday
You
night. I
forgot?
didn't. It was like I was just, yeah. You're so lost that you forget who you are. But it's weird because you're awake and you can see yourself and you can look in the mirror and splash cold water in your face. But you're like, I don't know who I am, and then you're like fearful if you're ever going to come back. But shamans that have gone through that experience a lot of times, there's always a coming back. And it was weird because for me, it was like one stomach grumble at a time, one digestive process at a time. My body was getting rid of it and processing it. And when I started to come to, that's a really euphoric feeling. You feel good because you're coming back to yourself. A little by little, you're remembering who you are. But just having that, um, there to help somebody on these journeys, I think is very pivotal. Not as like a trip sitter, as you can say, where people just poke their head and yeah, everything's fine, But it's more of a you're gonna come back, don't worry, this is what's happening now. You could chant with somebody, and it could be whatever you want to chant. It doesn't have to be, something fancy or anything.
Do you
But
remember what you
um,
were?
yeah, I was just saying, I was like thanking the mystery basically. I was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you, I love you. Because they were showing it was like I had a when you're in a I don't want to call the whole thing bad, but when you're in a very intense experience like that, you tend to get up, you move around, and then if you close your eyes, it's a totally different thing that's shown to you. And so you could have 20 different things shown to you during one session, and that's what happened. And one of those, I literally like felt myself being like 5-year-old, like a 5-year-old kid again, and just being, having intuition again and like being intuitive without the cultural boundaries, on your shoulders as a child. And I felt that and I was like, thank you for showing me that. I said it out loud. And so yeah, I think those things, I definitely say that sometimes, but um these things are, as much as I would say my normal use is more like an average dose or even less sometimes, like sometimes I like to low dose. Um, I feel like you can't, it doesn't show you, the mystery won't show you a lot unless you do these mega doses from some, on weird occasions. It's not that you should do it all the time. That's not what I'm saying or even advocating for, but it's just my experience that it seems like when I go down the deepest parts of the murky waters, is that's when it shows you the most, but it's also the most painful, you know? To go through. And all of these traumas, it's weird because like all the traumas that I had in my own personal life, I got over what I felt would be pretty early on in like maybe the first 3 years of doing mushrooms and morning glories and things like that and LSD. But it's, I guess it would be untrue to say that you still don't relive that sometimes on these experiences. And I think that's what a lot of other people that have done a lot of psychedelic journeys say as well, that there's really never a point where you get over that or it doesn't harken back to that at some point. So it is to have respect for the plants, and appreciate them and, just treat them with respect and not overdo it and not go around the planet saying that they're going to cure everybody with one mega dose, and that's just not how it works. And but also not be so flippant with it where you think everybody can be fine on a mega dose, because I don't think that's true
Mm-hmm.
either.
I think, like you were saying, pushing the boundaries occasionally just to get that extra step outside is what you're talking about, like every now and then.
Yeah, like I don't like after that experience, man. Like I'm not looking to do another mega dose for a long, like probably several years. I'm gonna still do it though. I'm not afraid of it. I'll probably go again next week, but I'm gonna do a regular, 5 gram acacia, 2 gram Ruth. And this one was a 10 gram, and not only was it a 10 gram, but I prepared it a lot longer. So typically I only prepare it for like 3, 4 hours, but this round was like 8 hours of heat preparation, which extracts a lot more of it. So yeah, it was wild, man. It was wild. I literally was looking at my arm just like this, and it looked like I was basically like, in many occasions you'll see things, right? You'll see entities, and sometimes you'll see dragons and cool things. Like you'll get that serpent feeling, that snaky feeling. So you understand why a lot of the Gnostics and Greeks had a lot of that imagery in their artwork around the rites, because you see it. But this time, like I felt like I was the dragon. Like I looked at my arm and I had green scales and it was iridescent, like sheening across my arm, and I was like, holy shit. So it was, you get this weird feeling, and then you get this other weird feeling, like it's like a boiling down, like the size of the universe, and then things that are smaller, so cells. And I remember at one point I felt like a jiggly, like eukaryotic cell. And then at one point I felt even smaller, like a DNA molecule. And I was like, so that's kind of cool. I'm just chilling here, jiggling around like a little happy eukaryote. So yeah, it was kind of interesting, and it's more of a holistic thing. And that's what I take away from it. It's not hard, fast answers or rules or um, sometimes it tells you, don't do that and don't do that, and it's pretty blunt about it. But the overall message I get is this holistic feeling in the universe and how everything impacts everything else, even if you don't want to think that. And that's kind of what culture and society and religion and all these ideologies make you think. they make you think that you don't need nature or you're outside of it or you're just existing in your own little bubble, and that's just further from the truth. And that's what these things get me back to is really feeling that holistic interconnection with nature and everything around you. Um, and not just some hokey dokey consciousness thing, but like literally everything around you is everything. And you're everything. And you're a part of it. And you're impacting things as well, the way that you choose to do things and move around. And so that's what I take from it. But yeah, I think we need to integrate that more into our culture. And I'm happy that states are. I know that Colorado now has legal like centers where people can go to do it. I think New Mexico has decriminalized it, and I know Washington State has decriminalized it. And I think that's the next step. And it's cool because that's what they did with weed. It started with the cities, and then it went to the states, and now we're starting to see cities decriminalize it with the mushrooms, and hopefully now entire states start to pick that up and people can start experiencing it more. But I think back to what you said, Cameron, I think there needs to be a tethering, if you will, not everybody, but like some people are going to need that tethering to some elder or shaman
Well,
that can
yeah,
provide that.
most realistically, ideally, we would have places that people would come to where they, just like I had shared with Tiger Shark, real close to where my kids are in Oakland right now. There's like a church of say the word for me. Entheogen. Say it for me.
Entheogen. What is it, Tiger Shark?
Go, go.
Entheogen.
Uh,
Entheogen. Is that how it is?
entheogens, yeah.
Entheogens. So there's the church of entheogens that I shared with you that was close to where my kids are. But I don't know what it is like to actually go there and partake and engage in that kind of setting. But ideally, that's what we would need to have is those kind of settings where people could go with where there are people that are knowledgeable and trustworthy and maybe even trained a little bit like on the medical side for in the event that it does not sit right with somebody, that there's somebody there to monitor like dehydration and whatnot, whatever would be able to help on that end of it. But I don't think that it would not be ideal to continue on where people are just trying it by themselves here or there or with a handful of friends because that's their only option and that's the only way that they can. That's where we're coming from right now. But ideally, it would be set up in society just like it was with the indigenous peoples. Like we can pretend, okay, if there had been no colonization, but rather the indigenous people allowed to develop and flourish straight up, that would already be a thing everywhere. We'd have that on the corners, just like churches, because that was the
Yeah.
church. That was the
Yeah. And that,
spiritual thing.
yeah, I agree with all that. You need people that have been around it that know, what people are feeling and dehydration, throwing up, going bathroom, and then just reassuring them because a lot of people are scared when they get into those murky waters, like I kind of was the other night. They don't realize that yes, you're gonna come out of it. Yes, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna get up the next morning. I mean, that's what I did. People are asking me like, "How do you feel?" And I'm like, "I'm just tired because I, stayed up a little later than normal, but I was up on Friday morning at 7 o'clock and went to work, no problem."
I mean,
And
don't they
that's the
already
cool.
do that at like Burning Man and stuff like that? Like, I mean, I haven't actually been, but I've heard people talk about the tents where they're like a come down tent or whatever, where they have people there to keep you calm and stuff.
Yeah, and that's what those retreats offer down there is that they'll sing with you, they'll chant with you, and there's techniques you can do to try to get it to go through your body. So like DMT, for example, and Harmala, so that the MAO either from BCAPI or from Syrian rue or other plants, um, that stuff all moves through your system within 12 to 24 hours. So it's really quick. It doesn't stay in there. So if you ever had to, well, it's not even in the standard drug test, but let's say they added it, it would be very hard for them to detect that. But there's ways to get that out of your body. It's moving around, you're doing a little exercise, drinking water, going to the bathroom, going number one, aside from throwing it up, which some people do. But yeah, just reassuring people that yes, you are, because, it can be scary if you don't think, if you think that you've fully disintegrated yourself and you're never going to come back. That could be a very scary thought, especially if it's your first go around. And my opinion on it too is like everybody's sensitive in different ways. So like you said, Cameron, like you did it, you didn't really like it, and that's exactly how the experience is. I mean, there's some, psychedelics that I don't like either, that I don't mess with. They just don't sit right with my body. So everybody's going to be different from that aspect. And then even in dose level, somebody
See,
could do like a micro dose and be like, that's a mega hit. Or maybe they do a micro, small, regular dose and they don't feel anything.
Hmm.
Right. So,
I was fine with acid. Like when I started doing that at like 16, and I usually just did 1 or 2 hits, and I mean that was always a good experience. Like I never like went off, like had any totally wild experiences, but
Yeah,
I always came out with a better perspective than I did before.
and that's a whole nother thing as well, the synthetic. But when our whole thing is like, oh yeah, they do it at Burning Man, they do it at the retreats. I mean, we've commodified it like that. It's been regulated, and that's why now it's like a commodity. But that is not ideal or healthy to me either, in my opinion. And I know I had mentioned to Tiger Shark before that I wanted to share the story of when I first did mushrooms, because I was like a young woman, barely married. It was before I had kids, and we came to California to visit my in-laws and meet some of the kids' dads, friends. And we went to a hotel room, and we they had the mushrooms, and we did it. And I remember, they were like, yeah, it's gonna be gross, and I was like, yeah, that's to be expected. And then they were like, oh yeah, well, it's good that you accept that right away. And then we ate them, and it was like slow to come on. It was like waiting, and then suddenly everything just seemed funny. Everything was so funny to me, just giggling. And then, like, we had a big old beach ball, in there, and it was being bounced around, and then it bounced in a way that, like, went directly into the bathroom, and it landed perfectly on the toilet. So the beach ball was like perfectly bounced onto the toilet. And it was like the funniest thing to me, right? But then I physically couldn't stop laughing. Like I no longer wanted to laugh anymore. I no longer wanted to be in that state of something is funny, but I physically could not control it. And then we ended up sitting, on the beds and put on a movie. And of course, what movie we put on is Borat. So we start watching Borat. And then I immediately started despising that man. I could not watch Borat for many years afterward because I was like, this man, this deceitful man, just really soured me to the whole thing. I could not find it funny. But
He was great in Les Mis, though. I just gotta say,
no, he was great.
I did not recognize that man.
No, he's a great actor for sure, but it was just funny because I was totally soured toward him on that, experiencing, thinking about it on that level. But then the weird thing was that, because I'm sitting in this room, right, because it's a hotel room, and then I'm able to see us all like kind of third perspective, like looking down at this square room of us inside of it. And then suddenly, what I could see was that square room becoming a bunch of squares on a calendar. And I was like, oh shit, this is not what I want my everyday to be. This is not what I want my life to be, is every day on the calendar in this kind of state. I was very much against any kind of things before this, growing up with the whole dare, and I just never had an interest in whatever drugs were, because I always thought, well, I don't want to be in a pretend state of mind. I want to really be happy, or I want to really feel this way or the other. I don't want to make myself feel that way for pretend, for short, temporary things or whatever. So I never really had an interest in it. And then I had this experience, and then I perceived it negatively coming around the end of it. And then so I didn't do it for many years. And then when I moved to Colorado, in my like middle 20s and all of that was legalized, my good friend, she does a lot of she's an advocate of the micro dosing stuff, and I so I tried it, and it was very similar to when I just did a little bit of the DMT that my father-in-law had made, where it was the visuals, you know, just very slightly more saturated color kind of thing. And then the next time I tried it, it had no effect in me, the mushrooms. And then I was not interested in trying to force something. So I hadn't, you know, I cannot even remember how many years it has been since I subjected myself to that. But I also mentally have known that I didn't want to be in a state before I had dealt with some of my own inner demons and conflictions, you know. So, but the average person isn't aware enough to even have these conversations with themselves to know that they could be, you know, in a place where they could successfully experience it. Like Tiger Shark, you're saying the other night, you know, you basically were there for yourself. You were your own guide, and you're right. A lot of other people could not have handled that, and that cannot. Right now, that's we are left to the wolves, in a sense, and you know right now with the way things are that we are kind of just trying to figure it out. But in order for a holistic society to have successfully integrated natural medicines back into itself, I think it definitely would have to be in a kind of guided environment with people that are you know, they have credentials. There's a lot of scientists that they have credentials and that experience, you know, so they can speak on both ends of it and you can trust them on it. So we need more of that. And I believe we're going to get there. I see everything coming together. Unless the EMP
Yeah,
hits.
once there's a way to make money from it, unfortunately, but that's how it all starts. In this society, it has to be a money thing, and then eventually it'll
Well,
unravel,
that's
like
true.
the
That we have,
with the weed
yeah,
story, like in Denver, you know, where it eventually just becomes people making their own and doing their own, and it becomes just a part of nature, like secondhand nature for most
yeah.
people.
So I guess one of the primary things would be to also step away from that being the primary thing, the profit no longer being primary, but rather the health and sustainability of people as a priority. But yeah, we definitely have to step away from that being the priority for sure. I think part of the solution to that is really leaning into a partial barter system, one on one with people. Once we network with each other well enough, um, that's what helps kind of ease us from that system a little bit. That's why it
I've
was
been
so
watching too much.
what?
Sorry, I've been watching too much Lady Babylon because you said profit, and my mind went to profit. Again, this is why English is a terrible language because there's no way to
I
articulate
love
that
it. I
in
love
a
it.
voice other than written.
I love a pun. I love puns.
Oh, me too. I'm all about. In case you haven't noticed my music names, I'm all about the wordplay.
Yeah.
I can't write the lyrics. I just like the names.
Yeah, so I think with that, I mean, we'll have less of a, I guess, a less of a, you know, impact on, I guess, overall religion in society. And I think they're already losing, you know, there's still some with, you know, states trying to pass these things and put it in public, but the more and more it goes to the Supreme Court, it's losing. And that's what we just saw. Actually, there was a case out of Oklahoma where they were doing the Ten Commandment thing and then they lost. But this is the crazy part. Listen to this. So even though it's like 6-3 in the Supreme Court, right? I thought it was going to be a 9-0 decision. Like clearly the law says separation of church and state, right? It was it was what was it? It was like a deadlock, like 4-4 and then like a no vote or something. And I was like, how is it that close?
Those
How is it
justices.
that close? It shouldn't even be that close.
And here in
Those
Texas, they
justices.
are. Okay, how about now? Okay, yeah, no, they just passed in the House and the Senate here in Texas to ban all THC products, even the ones that are already legal. So they're working now. They've got to reconcile both bills, but I mean, it's already passed both sides.
But
Yeah,
potentially, um, the right angle could be worked if it were overwhelmed in that. For instance, in Colorado, there are those churches. Well, I guess even here in California, but those churches where they accept the use of the entheogens and correlate it to the scriptures, where the fact that we have in the Old Testament the damn recipe for the holy anointing oil, which most likely had chock full of cannabis in there. So part of the educating ourselves and unlearning the propaganda and being educated on what's in the archaeology, I think that that would be another angle where we could inject those plants back into our worship and our understanding of dynamics with each other. And that would really, I think, lessen the holds that the church state has on us, because they are holding hands on a level, and it is all for the fucking money of just squeezing every bit of currency they can out of the people for their power trips.
yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. That is one way that we've dealt with it, right? So the Native Americans, because what happened early on during colonialization was they basically just, they took away their parental rights. So the kids were taken by force and put into boarding schools. They originally were given the opportunity to do that on their own, but they didn't do it. And these boarding schools were in cahoots with the Catholic Church, right? And a lot of other churches, but with the federal government. And so what they did is they also prosecuted the medicine man, the shaman, if you will, by destroying his stock and falsely imprisoning them. They did this in my mom's own tribe, but they also did in other tribes too. And he was able to get out, but they were saying he was practicing medicine without a license, right? But that's why you have the dawn of NAC, Native American Church. But NAC is only licensed and allowed to uh, take peyote because their whole, uh, I guess you could say, religion was based off of peyote only. It wasn't just a bunch of different entheogens. Um, the one that I'm part of, ONAC, is incorporating all natural compounds. So it doesn't include things like LSD or any extracted things. It has to be natural, not synthetic. Um, so that's what I have, and that's what I'm a part of. But you're not. There's even well, we have our own rules. You don't distribute it. You don't manufacture large amounts and all this other stuff. So that's how I think a lot of people have been skirting it legally, especially in the Native American community. Um, but I think to your point, it's going to get to a state eventually where it's all available for most people if they want to do it. And again, it's not like a set thing, but I don't think we're gonna I don't think there'll be cults coming out of it. You'll have some goofy people like that DMT laser guy that's still trying to do that, but every person that was basically the godfather of DMT research, the episode I sent you, Strassman on Danny Jones. I mean, he was able to, as soon as he heard about it, he was just like, no. And that's kind of how I reacted to it too, because I'm like, if there's one thing that these things teach you is that nothing's nothing's like set in stone. Nothing is absolute. And for people to conclude that there's a simulation and that we're all just in some sort of matrix like simulation is kind of goofy, if you
Oh
ask
my
me.
God. Worst theory ever.
Yeah.
So annoying.
So, am I going to, tell these people don't do what they want to do or say stop doing what you're doing? No, I mean, do what you want, but that doesn't mean I have to believe it. It doesn't mean that I have to go along with it. So, and the word entheogen actually was coined by Rook. Entheogen it's not an ancient term. That's just a coin that they
I
termed when they're
haven't
doing
even
their
thought to
writings.
look it up. I wonder what it is. Mesha.
Yeah.
Gonna have to look.
But telepathy, so like DMT, um, no, I'm on the phone. They're not working, bro. Stop. You're not gonna go.
I was just going to say, I literally keep a dictionary in my passenger seat just to look shit up because I've realized how little I know about the actual language if you're not reading the meanings.
Even if I know what a word means,
Telepathy.
I still like to look it up, what it technically is defined as.
So there's some weird stuff going around. I mean, it's not that, like, I don't know, people just in the community say some weird things, but telepathy. And so like when the when Western culture first encountered ayahuasca, um when they first encountered it, it was actually a Spaniard that described it as being called telepathy, and then it was a English speaking, shut the door, there's bugs, English speaking guy that people like to give credit for, but he actually got it from the Spanish guy and what he thought it was. But that was only B Cappy. And then on Danny Jones they go, oh, there was a didn't they synthetically make DMT in a lab before they discovered it? Well, discovered what? They were doing it for thousands of years, potentially tens of thousands of years before. Um, they have their own theories. Some of them say, well, they were only doing it till like 900 CE or something like that, but really knows. Um, but even with, let's just say it was 900 CE or whatever, a lot longer than anybody else was playing with that. And um, the first synthetic compound that was done in a lab was just the B cappy. It wasn't even the actual ayahuasca um, the full dose of the MAOI plus the DMT together. And so, not that I care, not that it really matters, but that's just what people always want to. Oh, I'm first, and we're the ones that did it this, and we're the ones that did it that, and it's like it doesn't really matter. Just take it. You know what I mean? Have the experience. It doesn't matter who did it first. It doesn't matter who does the most. I don't know if you guys heard this, but there's two guys in the mushroom world right now that um are trying to be like the male macho dudes that are like, I ate 30 dry grams. And so this guy, he's like a karate dude, and like he's known in the industry of saying, but who knows? Like, was somebody there to verify he did that? And then there's another guy that goes on Duncan Trussell's podcast, another former military guy that's like, oh yeah, but I ate 30 dry grams of albino penis envy, which are like it's a really strong strain. And it's just like, who cares? Like, why are you putting your ego into
Yeah,
stuff that's supposed to dissolve
and
your
then
ego?
what did you learn from it? And then what?
Like, and it's just silly, just so dumb. And that's what you get. And even Terrence McKenna talked about, like, back in his day, they would have magazines that came out from, called Shaman's Web and like other weird, goofy people that would bring a lot of weird, goofy things into it, like the DMT laser kind of guy. So I think that's always going to be around where people kind of make up their minds about things and they think it applies to everybody or everything. But if we could just navigate away from having this cultish stuff activity ever coming back into it, and nature didn't get us to this position. It's the history. It's our history that got us into this position.
Yeah, and our lack of understanding it or even knowing it until we're already well formed and having already made decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
But
You good, dude?
I was reminded of old Barney Rubble, though,
Go get your hat.
from the witch doctor community. Whenever he came on, it's a perfect example of how there is still potential for fanaticism and cult-like behavior and
Yeah, as much as I
ideology
like
that
that
could be
guy.
twisted for sure. So that's why it's so important that
Yeah,
if everybody has a comfortable understanding of like educating themselves
yeah,
on
go
what's
home and
out
watch it.
there instead of just relying on somebody else's knowledge and interpretation, then people wouldn't be able to be used in those ways.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I liked his energy, but just him saying that he was going off and saying, because in the Bible, you know how they anointed kids. And so he was saying that they anointed kids with cannabis and mushroom oil. And he's like, we need to do that again. And I'm like, dude, no, we don't. As much as I'm all for that stuff, no, kids don't need to be doing
I
that
mean, yeah,
stuff. Kids need to just be
we
kids.
can learn about all of that, but that does not mean we need to repeat everything now that we should know
No, and
better.
that might have been okay when they were raised in nature to be around that kind of stuff, but not around traffic.
Yeah, times have
Yeah.
changed for sure. The environments are different. Yeah, you can't even conceptualize. It's so hard to compare, when the way we live is so damn different. Even the amount of people we're subjected to, like that is totally out of the realm of what people would even be able to understand on a level. I guess it depends on what city you were in.
Well, there's definitely been packed cities. Like I feel like there's a lot of things have changed, but really it's just the technology. The
Yeah.
same situations are still going on, and that's why, again, why we're drawn back to the Greek, because they paid attention to all of the cycles and the socio-political cycles and stuff. And now that we're finally like looking at a larger, subsection, now that the church isn't burning or hiding all of it, because I mean they did control history for the longest time. They wrote history, and now we're finally like uncovering stuff that is giving us a clearer picture. It changes a lot of how you think about stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do have to jump here in a minute, but I appreciate it, and I'll look for any other times you want to do interviews. Let me know, and I'll be able to jump on with you guys. I appreciate it, and always learning from you, Lord Cameron. Always learning from you too, Bearcat.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Ditto. Yeah, no, I love them.
You too, Tiger Shark. You
Hmm.
always have good shit.
Yeah. That's why I knew I was gonna love to, rub shoulders and bump heads with you guys on this. So I'm looking forward to when we can do the interviews and stuff going forward. So thank you for being part of me trying to get some conversations going because we got good ones going.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys have a good weekend. I appreciate it
You
so much.
too.
You too.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye. Oh yeah, I barely started. Oh wait, no, I forgot how to do it. I was gonna say I barely learned how to do it right.
All right. Well, it was good talking to you.
Ditto.
All right. Be blessed.
Yeah, you too. Until next time.